And once again, I'd like to welcome everybody back for another episode of Legends of Buffalo Radio. We talked to some of the most legendary figures in the history of Buffalo radio in the city of Buffalo. And it's my pleasure to have this gentleman on, someone I've known about for quite some time. I'm sure you've all known about him too. I think he's probably best known as being the voice of AM 1400.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about some of his beginnings and his entire career in radio and share some memories as well. It's my pleasure to welcome to the Buffalo History Channel, the one and only, the Dr. James Cornelius. Welcome to the Buffalo History Channel.
Well, thank you, my brother. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for allowing me to come on and, share a little bit of, how we got started in this business a long time ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we always like to start from the beginning. So where did it begin for the Dr. James Cornelius in radio?
It began one Sunday when I was watching the Buffalo Braves play the Boston Celtics. And I was sitting there watching, and a commercial came up. And Jerry Bledsoe, didn't know who he was at the time, but Jerry Bledsoe came on and said, this female came on and said, "Nice show." And he said, "I know." And I was like, "Oh man, I think that's what I want. I want to do something like that," because down at the Langston Hughes Center, they had a communications program, and I was involved in the communications program, but it was for television, just like you. I was behind the scenes. I was behind the camera. But when I heard radio, I was like, okay. And I stumbled into radio by mistake, and because they wouldn't let me do sports on television.
Okay.
So I was playing basketball at the Delavan Moselle Center on Moselle, and this young lady who used to work at the Delavan Moselle Center, the JFK, and another rec center, she came up to me, she heard me speaking, and she said, "You need to be in radio." And I went to Buff State for maybe a semester and a half, and I said, "I don't need all these liberal arts courses." And then it was
I said that too.
I didn't need all these liberal arts courses. We're spending all this money for, I would never use them.
Exactly.
So it was, I don't know if you remember, Advanced Training Center. It was on Elmwood.
Heard about it. Many up in past interviews, others have mentioned it.
So I went to Advanced Training Center, WATC, and Brad Steiger, who used to do news on WUTV. He did Good News. Well, Brad was my instructor, and Brad taught me everything that I needed to know about the business of radio. And Brad tried to get me to go in easy listening instead of R&B. He said, you have the voice of easy listening, not R&B. And I was like, what is easy listening? And that was more like your Joy format back in the day. Elevator music. I didn't want to do that. So, it took a while, after I put my audition tape together and I graduated from ATC, I put my audition tape together, and I wanted to go out west, but I'm glad I didn't go out west because, after listening to your audition tape back then, you thought you was the knowing that, years later that you had a lot more to learn. So it took Laverne Blakely. Laverne Blakely hired me at WUFO in 1987 after a tape that she found, a tape that was left for her. She listened to the tape and she hired me. And it is history from there. So I give everything to Laverne Blakely. Laverne Blakely gave me my start at WUFO in 1987. And from there, I went to Foxy 105 in Columbus, Georgia. I was down there for 6 months, and I came back and went right back to WUFO. And in 1989, I got hired part-time at WBLK. And I spent most of my career at WBLK, 10 years at WBLK. I started out as weekends and I went from weekends to production director, from production director to doing an overnight shift, and it was the overnight shift for 5 years.
Okay.
And you replaced me when they said bye bye.
Okay.
You came in and you replaced me, and I turned the radio on one night, and I thought it was a tape. I thought they were playing me, but it was you.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh my God, this guy sounds so much like me.
Yeah.
I just had to meet you because I'm like,
Right.
oh God, he sounds so much like me, because I thought it was me. I thought they was playing a tape, but it was you. And I was like, oh my God, he's doing a great job too. So you replaced me at BLK.
Okay.
And from BLK, I went to 1400. And 1400 is where I learned everything about radio. When you really think you know about radio, you really don't know anything about radio until you go someplace else and you experience it from another perspective, like not urban radio. Because the person who hired me, she hired me to do urban format for 1400, but she wasn't an urban program director. She was a top 40 program director. And she taught me everything about radio. She taught me stuff that I never heard of before, like show prep, coming in an hour early, not to do commercials, but to do show prep, to get you ready for your show. And from then, it was just, should I say, full steam ahead, because I learned so much about radio from Sue O'Neill. Sue O'Neill taught me everything about radio. Now, I worked with some great program directors in the past, but Sue O'Neill, she taught me everything about radio. And I must say, so far, it was the women who elevated my career. I had great men program directors, but it was the women program directors that elevated me and gave me more knowledge of the business. So, and from 1400, I went to WUFO again. I went to WUFO, and I stayed over there for maybe 3 years. 3 years. And we went back to 1400, but not hired by 1400. We went back to 1400 under our label. And our label, we was producing the show for 1400 under Amani Productions. So we what we did, we produced the show that ran Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we owned the show. It was more like a syndicated show, but local syndication, because it was only heard here in Buffalo and no place else. So we did that until I got hired to program WUFO 96.5 by Sheila Brown. And I programmed 96.5 from the beginning, when they went from AM to FM. And we switched the format from gospel to R&B, and that's the same format that they're using today. So again, it was another female that gave me the opportunity to advance my career in radio. And I worked with some great brothers in radio: Eric Faison, Hurricane Dave, Jim Snowden, Freddie Patrick. These are all the guys that I worked for.
Legendary names.
And I learned so much from these guys. Eric Faison, I learned so much from Eric. Hurricane Dave, he came in, and Hurricane Dave taught me how to get the production done faster. And at that time, it wasn't digital. I mean, we had to do everything manual. We had a reel to reel, and you had to splice and put everything together. And
I remember them days in college.
And Hurricane Dave gave you a half an hour to put a promo together. And if you couldn't do it in a half an hour, you didn't have the job. So Hurricane Dave taught me, how to do production and do it better and faster. So hats off to Hurricane Dave. My man Jim Snowden, he gave me the opportunity when he came to Buffalo to change the format over at 93.7. Jim Snowden came in, and at that time in Buffalo, you didn't hear any rap music. Hurricane Dave came from Houston. I mean, not Hurricane Dave. Well, Hurricane Dave came from Houston too, but Jim Snowden came from Houston, and from Magic 102.5 in Houston. And Jim Snowden came in and changed the format and the sound here in Buffalo. Right. So that sound that you hear now is because of Jim Snowden. Jim Snowden came in and changed the sound of Buffalo radio. And then then Hurricane Dave followed the format, and then Eric Faison kept it going, and Skip Dillard came in after that to keep it moving. Right. But these are just some of the, the legendary names in radio that I worked for, and these are some of the guys that, helped me along my career path.
Yeah, that. I mean, you definitely brought back some memories. Well, first of all, I mean, going all the way back to what you said in the beginning. You definitely sparked up some memories with me when you mentioned Delavan and Moselle. I remember the wreck very. I lived the wreck very well.
What you know about the wreck, man?
Yeah, we lived over on Northumberland in that area, but there were times we would take them. Sometimes me and my friends would take those long walks over there to the wreck from Northumberland over to Moselle. Basically, y'all had like the best playground setup.
Yeah, we did.
It was a big and dangerous one too. When I look back on,
yes, it was. You had to watch it back all the time.
Yeah, they had that one thing up there. We always used to say to each other, "I bet you can't jump from that." So it took a long time. But yeah, we used to go into the rec and didn't play basketball too much. But I remember they had like a karate class in there that we took part in a few times.
Okay. Yeah.
But what were some of you talked about going back into the early part of your career? What were some of your fondest memories of working at let's start with WUFO. When you started there and you were just learning it then.
Yeah, when I first came in, I came in as a rookie. I came in and I didn't know anything. I just came out of school. A year later, a year earlier, I was in school. Then I came out, and I didn't know anything. See, in school at ATC, you didn't have to bring no headphones. You didn't have to do anything. Everything was there for you. So, my goodness, man, when I came in the first day, I was doing an afternoon drive, and I was relieving the legendary Al Parker. Wow. So Al Parker took his headphones and left out the studio. He left out the studio, so I couldn't cue up no songs. I couldn't do anything. And
I still had the records. Did you still have the records, or did you have the cart machine?
No, we had carts and records. But I had to cue up my first song, and I couldn't cue it up because I couldn't hear anything. So I'm ready to play the song, and I'm ready to hit it, and then nothing played. And all of a sudden, I know Laverne is listening. Laverne came in there running, and Laverne gave me her headphones. And I put her headphones on, and at the time, I don't forget who was the general manager, but the general manager didn't give me a week. He said he's not gonna make it. He won't last a week. And then once I heard that, I was like, oh well, I gotta prove everybody wrong because look at here, I'm gonna last more than a week. Jesse Keys.
Jesse
Keys told Laverne he won't make it. He won't last a week. Well, lo and behold, I last more than a week. But that was a trying time because I didn't have no headphones. I came in with no headphones. I just came in to do my job and do like I did when I was, at ATC at an advanced training center. And can I tell you something? Nothing like it. School will not prepare you for the real world, not at all. So that night I had to run out and buy me a pair of headphones, and that was history. I bought me a great pair of headphones, and I bought me a pair of Sonys. And when I came back the next day, it was on and popping. So that's my memorable moment right there because I was scared mess. I was a scared mess, and I didn't know what to do. And my Delavan crew, because all of Delavan was listening. So when I got off the air that day and I was driving home, all of them said, nice job. And I was like, nice job. No, I was not so.
They just glad to hear you on the air.
I believe that's what it was, because my whole Delavan crew, and I mean everybody from Delavan, you got Stevens, Wyoming, Shuley, Deerfield, Carl, Cambridge,
My neighborhood,
Cornwall. All of those guys, when I drove down the street, all of them were saying, yeah. So I guess they, the rah, because a neighborhood kid was finally doing something good, But that was my memorable moment right there, when I had no headphones and Al Parker just left out the studio.
Yeah, them were like the golden days of radio, man. When you're on and you're local and people in your neighborhood can hear you, and then you go places and they recognize. I got a little taste of that.
That was the best.
Last days of it, but
that was the best. That was the best part about it. Once again, and when syndication came in, syndication hurt our market,
right.
our genre, for black radio. It hurt it because syndication came in, and if you look at it around the country, where you had morning shows, all of those announcers, they got fired. So where did they go? They couldn't go nowhere, because they was used to doing urban radio. So syndication, they didn't help us. It hurt us. Where if you look at white radio, they do syndication, but they keep their local people. They didn't let their local people go. You'll hear only one syndicated show in any white market you go to. But in our markets, no matter where you go across the country, everything is syndicated. So you have no local presence, no matter where you go. And all of those local announcers, they lost their jobs. Where did they go? We don't know. A lot of folks didn't have the ability to or be fortunate enough to have a AM 1400 or a WUFO in their city. So if they didn't have a 1400 or WUFO in their city, they were just lost, and it didn't help us out at all.
Right. Now, before I'm going to get to 1400, but I'm going to get some of your memories from your days at WBLK.
Oh my goodness, man. Freddie Patrick.
Wow. The legend himself.
Freddie hired me, and when I came in, see, Freddie was, you had to be able to read out loud. And Freddie put me in a production room and gave me a newspaper. And he said, I'm going to start the reel to reel, and I want you to read it. I said, what you say? He said, I want you to read this on the reel to reel. Oh man, I was so nervous, Doug. I was like, because nobody ever told me to do that before.
Right.
So Freddie came back in and he said, "Are you finished?" I said, "Yeah." So he played the reel. He wound the reel to reel, but the reel to reel wasn't working. I said, "Thank you, Lord." So the following week, Freddie called me back and said, "You're hired, and you're going to be working weekends. You're going to be working Friday night and Saturday nights." And I started out Friday and Saturday nights, and you had to do an air check every weekend. I had to do an air check, and then that Monday I had to go in and I had to sit down with Freddie Patrick. Mm-hmm. So when I came in for my air check session, Freddie said, "We don't do that over here." I said, what don't we do over here? "Oh, no. We just don't. You just don't open up the mic and say or do anything you want to do anytime you feel like it. Not over here." He said, this ain't WUFO. I was like, okay. So there was with Freddie and BLK, there was certain times that you could open up the mic and talk. So at 5 minutes after, you could talk. Going into your 20-minute stop set, you could talk. You couldn't talk at the 35. You can only talk at the 50. So I had to learn all of that because everything was formatted. And over at WUFO, it wasn't formatted because WUFO was more personality, and they wanted you to have your personality come through. So you didn't have, you can up as long as you had something pertinent to say over at WUFO, you were good to go. You just couldn't open up the microphone over at BLK. That was the big difference, and I had to learn that. But it was a learning tool that helped me along my career when I went other places.
Yeah, definitely, man. You know, I'm listening as I'm sitting here listening to you. It's like it brings to mind when I was working at WUFO. And this is kind of how I have to say this is kind of how the Legends of Buffalo radio series really came about. You know, being at WUFO and listening to like Dwayne Landers and everybody talk about the old days at WUFO, and that there was like a standard of excellence that was like required of you.
Yes.
Under like Mullins and Byron Pitts and all of them.
Yep. Byron hired me at Foxy 105 in Columbus, Georgia. One of the best.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Byron did mornings and I did evening drive in Columbus, Georgia. But Byron hired me. Yeah. But those are some of the greats that you know that came through WUFO. And more greats, Jerry Bledsoe, Frankie Crocker, you know, some of the best announcers that went nationally. They came through the doors. They came through the doors of WUFO. So, I mean, it was a standard at WUFO that was based on your personality. And because if you had a personality, your personality is what carried you and made you.
Right.
Yeah.
So so now let's get to AM 1400. I know everybody wants to hear about that. I can remember being in my I believe I was at the barbershop. I want to give a shout out and rest in peace to Woody and Manuel from Woody and Manuel's on East Delavan. Yeah, and they always have a radio in the background. They would, and many times they would have AM 1400 on. And one day I was listening. I was just sitting there waiting my turn and then listening. And then all of a sudden, you came on and said you can tell your friends. You said something like you can tell your friends that the doctor, James Cornelius, is now on AM 1400. I guess it must have been your first day or whatever. But like, oh wow, I remember that name. The doctor's on AM 1400 now, because I know it had been on for a while and it had been really popular in the community already because it played a lot of old school R&B. A lot of people were tuning into it. So what are some of your memories from AM 1400?
Well, when I got hired at AM 1400, I got hired not to do a live show. I got hired to voice track, and I didn't know anything about voice tracking, but voice tracking was up and coming. It was a way, you know, that radio stations streamlined and kept costs down. So they hired me to voice track. And when I came in, I was like, nah, this ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work because it's not me. It's not our music. With 1400 had a 400 song rotation, and they didn't play our hits. They played the pop black hits. And, being from, our era, we know what was popular here in Buffalo at that time. So, I sat down and I talked with the program director at the time, which was Sue O'Neill. And Sue said, well, if you think that you can make it better, well, try. Well, that's all I needed to hear was try. So she called me in and she said, what do you think about this right here? I said, what are you talking about? It was the Tom Joyner Morning Show. So Tom Joyner was introduced to Buffalo from AM 1400. AM 1400 brought Tom Joyner to Buffalo. So when we brought Tom Joyner to Buffalo and to the Buffalo market, now Tom's format, we had to duplicate his format, and that's all I wanted to hear. So when we duplicated his format, you heard all the hits from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. And I mean, I had to go on, I had to find some songs that was on cassette, and I had to take them from cassette and put them in the system. I had to take songs from albums and put them in the system digitally. It was all our music. It was my music and Marnetta Malcolm's music that you heard that changed the format at 1400. But Sue O'Neill gave us the green light to go ahead and change the format at 1400. Not just the popular pop black hits you heard. Now you start hearing more and more and more of the the top 600, top 700, top 1,000 songs from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. That was very, very popular, not only here in Buffalo, but nationally.
Yeah, and that I think that really spoke to the popularity of the station, because I know people were really like people had kind of got a little tired of VLK at one point. They kind of clamored towards that particular format that was being served on AM 1400.
Yeah, the demographic that we were going after at that time was the demographic that BLK forgot about, and it was the women 35 to 55, and these are the women who spend more money. They spend more money, and that was our target demo that we went after, and our base was all African-American women, and then the men, they followed. So when we had a remote, the remote was always a huge success because people came from everywhere. When we were out and about, people came from everywhere. So we had a little PT Cruiser, and they would put me in that PT Cruiser, and I would drive around the city, and we'll stop on Bailey Avenue. As soon as we stop on Bailey Avenue, oh my goodness. And I mean, we're talking about folks, from 40 to age 70, 75, man, they would stop, and we would just start, giving stuff away. And our base, the base was so strong, and that's the reason why they're still popular today, because of their base. They got that base that they won't turn 1,400 off.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up and ask you about it, and have you talk about it. Probably one of the most memorable components to your show on 1400 were the birthday shout outs.
Oh yeah.
When you remix Stevie Wonder, your own.
Remix Stevie Wonder, and we started singing, and oh my goodness, Doug, man, this one, but I everything in radio we steal from somebody.
Yep, it's the part that counts.
From what I did, it was Al Parker. Back in the day, it was Al Parker and his Offbeat Singing Club. Okay. So what I did, we did Happy Birthday. We did the birthday shouts, and I would do Happy Birthday to you. And then when we get to the part right there, I would go, like I was all off beat and everything. And I say, well, it's the thought that counts. And Doug, let me tell you, that's the phrase today. Everybody said, are you going to sing Happy Birthday? No matter where I went, they wanted me to sing Happy Birthday. So it was something that I took from Al Parker. But the reason why we did it because I felt that everybody deserves somebody to sing or say happy birthday to them, because everybody celebrates a birthday, but some folks don't get the celebration that other folks get.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. And so after all of that, what did you go on to do after radio?
Well, after radio, my wife and I, we this is the studio that we're in right now. Okay. We wanted to try, to build the gospel market. So what we did, we put the studio together and we started doing gospel shows. And we had a very, very popular gospel show on 1400 that ran Sunday mornings from 8 a.m. till 11 a.m. So we ran it from 8 to 11. And it was one of the hottest gospel shows ever in the city of Buffalo, besides Don Allen on weekends. But it was very, very popular. And when we stopped doing it, when I left 1400 and the show stopped, well, they kept some of it, but they didn't keep the original music how I did it. Everybody was like, wow, you got to come back and do it. So we have El Shaddai Productions, and El Shaddai Productions is the productions company that I own, and we do shows, we do sweepers, we do drops, we do voiceovers, and event coming soon. we'll be doing an internet gospel jazz show. So that's what we're doing right now. So and also work for the NFTA. So after radio, there was an NFTA, but I was always doing radio and the NFTA at the same time. So it's time to say bye-bye to the NFTA in June, and now just focus on El Shaddai Productions.
And what was it like to, many of us, working on the radio and being on air, and we do that, and we juggle that between our real jobs. Most people don't think we all have that. Most people think that's our real job. But so, what was it like being a bus driver, and then having people know that you were on the air?
And the funny thing about that, Doug, because we had to make announcements,
right?
And we had to call out streets and everything. And
blew you cover.
My boss, he said, why did you stop calling streets? I said, because as soon as I opened up my mouth, I would look up and everybody would say, that's him. And so I was like, Jimmy, I just can't do it anymore. But in urban radio, not only here in Buffalo, Doug, and I'm so glad you brought that up, unless you're a Tom Joyner, a Ricky Smiley, or someone like that who's doing a syndicated show, urban radio don't pay the bills. So you have to have another job to pay the bills. A lot of folks think that we make so much money, Doug. They think that we get paid 80, 90,000 a year, being on the air. And even back in the day, you didn't get 80,000. I mean, even your morning show, local morning show, folk didn't get paid, top dollar. So we always had to have something else to fall back onto. Well, the only ones that really got paid during our era, Doug, is Hooker and the Late Dawn, because they were not only good here in Buffalo, but they were good internationally because they were able to go over to Canada and do well over in Canada too. So, but Dawn had another job as well.
Yes, she did.
Yes, she did. So besides those two, everybody in Black radio had to have another job just to make it. Yeah.
But as we get ready to close, I got to bring this up. I remember it had to be several months ago now. I was on Facebook coming out of the gym, and I going through Facebook on my phone, and I saw a live video that you were on. It was yourself. I think it was Don Robinson that was recording Facebook Live. You were on it. David Allen was on it. I think Curtis and Elsie were there.
Yes.
And I said, "What is a Legends of Buffalo Radio convention or something?" And that being said, what do you being among that group? What do you think about the current state of local radio in Buffalo today compared to your days?
There is no local radio. I mean, everybody is from a different city. The only ones that have a local feel is still WUFO, Power 96.5, because you still have Lee Pettigrew, you have Terry Davis,
right?
You have you have some local folk, but at BLK you have no local people. And BLK, I mean, that's not our demographic. We have really outgrown BLK. But even now, over at 1400 is syndicated because with drops, so there's no local presence there either. So local radio, it doesn't have a presence here in Buffalo, only over at Power 96.5. Any place else, there is no local feel to local radio in Buffalo. It's not like it used to be at all.
Got to ask this question too.
Yes,
I want to toss this in here. You were there when that day. Unfortunately, I wasn't there, but that day where they finally made that transition that they always wanted to make from AM to FM.
Oh yeah,
and going 24 hours.
24 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. What was it like to be there in that historic day?
Oh, let me tell you that it was very historic. Because see, Sheila and I, we started together. At WUFO in 1987, and to see it go from the 60s to where it is now, and then you're going to flip the switch. And when we flip the switch, I ran to my truck. She ran inside the building, and to hear, to hear it on FM, I mean, it was one of the most inspirational moments and joyous moments, because we all started crying, because it was something that she was trying to make happen in Buffalo for a long time.
Yes.
And it finally came to fruition. And we were all excited about it. And it was one of the most memorable things in my lifetime. And I'll never forget it at all.
So what do you, last question, what do you think is the significance of the legacy of Black radio in Buffalo?
Oh my God. Oh, Doug, man. I mean, there's just so much history of radio in Buffalo, because people used to come from other cities to recruit and get our talent from Buffalo and take them all over the place. Just like Jim Snowden. Jim Snowden, he didn't start in Black radio, but he started at WKBW, and he went from WKBW to Houston. And that was just that's where he started. That's where he became very, very popular. Jerry Bledsoe, Frankie Crocker, they left Buffalo and went to New York City, and they became so famous. Eddie O.J., Don Allen Jr., they all left Buffalo because they was recruited from somebody else to go to these new up-and-coming markets, and they became famous. They became a household name. And I'm gonna tell you one more person who could have did it, but he didn't do it because his family was more important to him, and that was Freddie Patrick. If Freddie Patrick would have left Buffalo, Freddie Patrick would have been just as famous as everybody else who we just named, because he was just that good.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
For real. Yeah.
Yes, he was, brother. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on as a part of the Legends of Buffalo radio series.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I thank you, man. I didn't see this coming, but you are a legend yourself by giving us this platform while we're still living. Right. The saying is, give them their flowers while they live. And I done seen so many folk on this platform that you have created for the Legends of Buffalo. So if nobody has thanked you, I want to thank you for creating this platform for us.
Absolutely. Because like I said, when I was at WUFO, when I started hearing all those stories, I knew thought in the back of my mind, even then back in 2007, man, this would make a great either TV series or documentary, something of that, because some of the stories were so amazing and unique.
Yes.
And they don't get told a lot. We think about Buffalo media as a whole. First three people that come to mind, Irv, Rick, and Tom.
That's exactly.
Exactly. Much respect to them. I grew up with them.
Exactly. But it's a shame, and I know you got to go, but you got the Buffalo broadcasters. You got that, but they do not allow us. They don't even recruit us or pay homage to us, and we're part of the Buffalo broadcasters. And they don't even look at us as being part of the Buffalo broadcasters. But thank you for creating this platform so folk know about the legends, the Black legends of radio here in Buffalo. Not only the white legends, but the Black legends who made history here in Buffalo, my brother.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I'm happy to do it. All right, man. I'm going to see you when I get back to Buffalo.
No problem, my brother. Thank you.
All right, my brother.
Yes, sir.